My name is Emily. I'm 21 years old, and I moved to this city a year ago to pursue my degree. Life here is different, fast-paced, and expensive. I quickly realized that studying alone wasn't going to pay the bills, so I got a job at a high-end boutique. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for rent and groceries. The store manager, Miss Thompson, was a striking woman in her late 30s. She was confident, poised, and intimidating. From the start, I noticed how she carried herself always in sharp heels, perfectly tailored suits, and a commanding presence. She was professional, but her eyes lingered a little too long when she looked at me. At first, I thought I was imagining it. One evening, as I was restocking shelves after closing time, she approached me, her voice softer than usual. "You're working so hard, Emily," she said, her tone almost tender. "I hope you know I've noticed." "Thank you," I replied, unsure of where this conversation was going. Her gaze lingered, making me feel exposed. She stepped closer, her perfume enveloping me. "You have potential, Emily. I could help you go far here." Her words seemed harmless, but the way she said them sent a shiver down my spine. I nodded politely, unsure of what to say. Over the next few weeks, Miss Thompson's attention became more intense. She found excuses to keep me late after shifts. She'd comment on my appearance, complimenting my hair, my clothes, even my smile. It felt uncomfortable. One night, she invited me to her office. "Have a seat," she said, motioning to the chair across from her desk. I sat down, my hands nervously clasped in my lap. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine. "Emily," she began, her voice low, "I've been thinking. You work hard, and I believe you deserve more." I tilted my head, confused. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean," she continued, her tone silky, "there are opportunities for you here. If you're willing to take them." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. My heartbeat quickened as her meaning became clear. She stood, walking around the desk until she was standing beside me. "You're smart, Emily, ambitious. I admire that." Her hand brushed lightly against my shoulder as she spoke, sending a shiver through me. I froze, unsure of how to respond. "I could help you, Emily," she said, her voice soft yet commanding. "But loyalty is a two-way street." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. "What kind of loyalty are you talking about?" I asked hesitantly. Her lips curved into a slow smile, the kind that goes beyond just showing up on time and doing your job. I felt trapped, like a deer caught in headlight. Her presence was overwhelming, her words laced with unspoken meaning. I don't know what you mean," I stammered, though deep down I did. I just didn't want to acknowledge it. She tilted her head, her gaze piercing. "Don't play coy, Emily. I see potential in you, potential I'd like to nurture." Her hand moved to my chin, gently lifting it so our eyes met. "But only if you're willing to commit." The air in the room grew heavier, charged with a tension I couldn't quite name. My pulse raced as her words sank in. I needed this job. I needed the money, but at what cost? My thoughts spiraled as I struggled to find the right response. Miss Thompson seemed to sense my hesitation. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Think about it." With that, she stepped back, her demeanor shifting as if the conversation had never happened. "You're dismissed for the night." I left her office, my legs shaky and my mind racing. The weight of her offer lingered with me the entire way home. For the next few days, I tried to avoid her as much as possible, keeping my head down and focusing on my work. But Miss Thompson wasn't one to be ignored. Her glances became more lingering, her comments more suggestive. One evening, as I was closing up the store, she appeared behind me, startling me with her sudden presence. "You've been distant," she remarked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. "Have you thought about my offer?" I hesitated, my stomach nodding. "I have," I admitted, my voice barely audible. I don't know." She stepped closer, her expression softening. "Let me make it clearer," she said, her hand brushing against mine. "I can give you more hours, higher pay enough to cover your tuition and more, but only if we understand each other." Her words hung in the air, and I found myself nodding despite the turmoil inside me. "I'll think about it." She smiled, her hand lingering on my arm. "Take your time, Emily, but don't take too long." As she left, I felt the weight of her offer pressing down on me, the promise of stability clashing with my sense of self. That night, as I lay awake in my small apartment, I couldn't stop replaying her words in my mind. The decision I faced wasn't just about money. It was about how far I was willing to go for a better future. The next day, I avoided eye contact with Miss Thompson, focusing solely on my tasks. But she wasn't easily deterred. During lunch, she approached me, sliding into the chair across from mine with a confident smile. "I hope you're not overthinking things, Emily," she said, her voice laced with both charm and authority. "I just want what's best for you," she added, her hand resting on the table, fingers lightly tapping. I forced a smile, my stomach churning. "I appreciate that, Miss Thompson. I need time." Her gaze softened, but her smile remained sharp. "Of course. But remember, opportunities don't last forever." That evening, I stayed late to finish inventory. The store was eerily quiet, and I was alone, so I thought. Miss Thompson appeared in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the dim light from the hallway. "You're working hard again," she said, stepping into the room. "It's one of the things I admire about you." Her compliment felt like a trap, but I nodded politely. "Thank you. I just want to do a good job." She approached slowly, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. "You do more than a good job, Emily." Her voice dropped, taking on a velvety tone. "You're special, and I want to make sure you know that." I felt my breath hitch as she reached out, her fingers brushing against my arm. "You don't have to struggle." The air between us grew heavy, charged with an intensity that made it hard to think straight. "I can make things easier for you," she continued, her touch lingering. "If you trust me." I stepped back, my heart pounding. I should finish this inventory," I stammered, trying to create space. Miss Thompson tilted her head, her smile never wavering. "Of course. But remember what I said, Emily." She left, and I was left standing there, my thoughts a chaotic mess. Her words echoed in my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every moment, every touch, every subtle implication. The next morning, I looked at my reflection in the mirror, trying to decide who I wanted to be. Was I willing to compromise my values for financial security? Or was there another way forward? As I walked into the store, Miss Thompson greeted me with her usual confident demeanor, her eyes scanning me knowingly. "Good morning, Emily," she said, her tone light but layered with unspoken meaning. "I trust you've thought things over." I hesitated, the weight of her expectations pressing down on me. "I have," I replied softly, avoiding her gaze. Her smile widened and she stepped closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "And what have you decided?" I opened my mouth to answer, but the words caught in my throat. The decision I was about to make would change everything. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I think I need more time," I finally said, my voice trembling slightly. Miss Thompson's smile faltered for a split second before she regained her composure. "Of course," she said smoothly. "But don't take too long, Emily. Opportunities like this don't come around often." Her tone was gentle but firm. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I couldn't concentrate on my work, her words and lingering looks clouding my mind. That evening, as I closed up the store, I found a small note tucked under my bag. It was from Miss Thompson. "Meet me at the cafe down the street tomorrow after your shift. Let's talk." The message was brief but carried weight. The following day, I couldn't shake the anxiety building inside me. The hours dragged on, each one heavier than the last. When my shift ended, I found myself walking toward the cafe, my heart pounding in my chest with every step. Miss Thompson was already there, sitting at a corner table. She looked up as I entered, her expression unreadable. "Emily," she greeted me warmly, motioning for me to sit. "Thank you for coming. I know this hasn't been easy for you." I sat down, my hands fidgeting nervously in my lap. "It hasn't," I admitted, "but I'm here to hear you out." She nodded, her demeanor calm and collected. "I want to make things clear," she said, leaning forward slightly. "I see potential in you, Emily, but potential needs to be nurtured, guided, and I can do that for you." Her words were persuasive, almost hypnotic. "This isn't just about the job," she continued. "It's about your future." I looked at her, torn between the practicality of her offer and the moral conflict it stirred within me. I don't want to compromise who I am, I said finally, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Miss Thompson's smile softened, but her eyes held an intensity that made it clear she wasn't giving up. And you won't. This isn't about changing who you are, she added. It's about embracing who you could become. Her words lingered in the air, and I realized that the decision wasn't just about her offer. It was about what I wanted for myself. As I left the cafe that evening, my thoughts were a whirlwind. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on me. I knew I had to make a choice soon, one that would define not only my future, but also who I wanted to be. The next day, I walked into work with a sense of determination. I wasn't sure what I would say to Miss Thompson, but I knew I needed clarity. As I stocked shelves, I caught her watching me from her office. Her piercing gaze felt like a silent reminder of the conversation we'd had. After my shift, she called me into her office. I entered hesitantly, my heart pounding. "Close the door," she said softly. I did as she asked, turning to face her as she stood by the window. The setting sun cast a golden glow across the room. "Emily," she began, her voice steady but gentle, "I want to be honest with you. I see so much potential in you, but I also understand the position you're in. It's not easy being on your own in a new city," she added, her tone softening. Her words caught me off guard, and I felt a lump form in my throat. "It's not," I admitted quietly. She approached me, her eyes searching mine. "I'm offering you more than just financial stability, Emily. I'm offering support." Her words were persuasive, but they also carried an unspoken expectation. I struggled to find the right response. "You don't have to decide right now," she said, her voice low, "but I need to know that you're willing to trust me." I looked away, my mind spinning. I don't know," I stammered. "This feels like too much." Miss Thompson stepped closer, her expression softening. "It's only too much if you make it that way." Her hand brushed against mine, and I felt a jolt of something I couldn't quite identify. Fear, excitement, or both. The room grew quiet, the air thick with tension. I met her gaze, and for a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. "I just need some time," I whispered, my voice barely audible. She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Take the time you need," she said, stepping back, "but don't let fear hold you back from what you deserve." As I left her office, my emotions were a whirlwind. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding the decision. That night, I lay awake in bed, replaying everything she had said. Her words were persuasive, but my doubts remained. What was I willing to compromise? What was I willing to risk? And most importantly, who did I want to be? The answers didn't come easily, but I knew one thing for certain. My decision would define more than just my future. It would define me. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. My heart was still heavy, but my mind felt more focused. As I walked into the boutique, the familiar scent of polished wood and floral candles greeted me, grounding me momentarily. Miss Thompson was in her office, the door slightly ajar. I caught a glimpse of her seated at her desk, her expression thoughtful. I took a deep breath and knocked lightly. She looked up, her usual confident smile appearing as she motioned for me to enter. "Emily," she said warmly, "I wasn't expecting you so soon. Have you made a decision?" I hesitated, my hands gripping the edge of the chair. I sat down. "I've been thinking a lot," I began, my voice steady. She leaned forward, her eyes searching mine. "And," she prompted, her tone soft but insistent. "I'm grateful for everything you've done for me," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But I need to do this my way." Her expression didn't falter, but I noticed the slight tightening of her jaw. "I see," she said after a pause. "I respect your decision, Emily," she continued, her tone calm. "But you should know that not everyone gets second chances." I nodded, her words sinking in but not shaking my resolve. "I understand," I replied, my voice firm. The tension in the room was palpable, but I felt a weight lift from my shoulders as I stood to leave. "Thank you for everything," I said, meeting her gaze one last time. "I'll always appreciate your support." Miss Thompson's smile returned, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're welcome, Emily," Best of luck. As I left her office, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, uncertainty, and a lingering sadness for what could have been. That evening, I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker against the dark sky. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had made the right choice for myself, and that was enough. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be mine, and I was ready to face it head on, no matter what. As I closed my eyes that night, I felt a quiet strength settle within me. This was just the beginning, and in that moment, I realized that the most important decision I had made wasn't about money or success. It was about choosing to stay true to myself, and that made all the difference. The city outside buzzed with life, and so did I, ready to take on whatever came next, one step at a time. The following morning, I woke up feeling lighter. The sun streamed through my window, and for the first time, I felt at peace. At work, Ms. Thompson greeted me politely, her usual commanding presence slightly subdued, but still respectful. We didn't talk about the decision, but there was an unspoken understanding between us. A boundary had been set. As the weeks went by, I focused on my studies and work, building a life that was truly mine, brick by brick. Opportunities came my way, ones that didn't ask me to compromise my value, and I grabbed them with both hands. Ms. Thompson remained professional, and though her lingering looks never completely stopped, she respected my space. One day, as I clocked out for the evening, she approached me. "Emily," she said, her voice kind but firm, "you've proven yourself to be stronger than I gave you credit for." "I respect that," she admitted with a small smile. "Thank you," I replied, surprised by her words. "That means a lot coming from you." As I walked home that night, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter with Miss Thompson had taught me something invaluable. Life would test me, push me, and challenge me to my core, but I would always have the power to choose who I wanted to be. And in the end, that was the greatest strength of all. With a deep breath and a steady heart, I stepped into my apartment, ready for whatever came next. This was my story, and I would write it on my terms.